while. I just wanted to do a quick little demo of mixing up the chalk paint. These little containers that I buy at Lowe's are what I normally use to mix up my chalk paint. You can see in this one I had some teal paint mixed up in that, but I am still out of the containers, so instead you'll see you can use just about anything you want to. So I'm going to use this little pad thai container that we just saved that came with some frozen food. You can use whatever you want to mix up your chalk paint. What you're going to do is combine Plaster of Paris. This box is looking a little worn out because I've been using the same box of Plaster of Paris ever since I first started chalk painting about 6 years ago. This stuff goes a long way, so you know it's a good investment to just invest in a box of this and just keep it on hand, because a lot of times when I get the urge to paint something, I don't have the urge to go to the store first, and so I'll just go to my paint stash and see if there's something that I can make work, and then I have my Plaster of Paris. Then all I have to do is add water to that, and voila, there you have it. There's your chalk paint. So what you're going to want to do is first mix your Plaster of Paris and water, and today I'm just going to do a really small batch with this little color sample that I have. It's called Sassy Lilac, and I'm not even sure what I'm going to do with this yet, but it's a really pretty color, and I've had this sample for a while and I was afraid it was about to get dried out anyway, and so I think I'll just go ahead and mix up some chalk paint and then it'll be ready when I get ready to go with it. But I'm just going to take my half cup measuring cup. Now if you're going to be doing a lot of this, you might even want to invest in a dedicated set of measuring cups just for your chalk paint. I probably should do that. Hopefully I will not poison myself and my family by using the measuring cups that I use for the chalk paint to cook with also, but right now that's what we're doing. So let's see if I can get this open, and probably should have tried before I sat down here. There it goes. Okay, so you're just gonna take, and y'all look, that's skimmed over, but it's okay. That's why I brought some paper towels up to my workroom. Sometimes these kind of things get a little bit messy. So anyway, Sassy Lilac, and we're just gonna take a half a cup of that and pour it. This is really gunky. It's okay though. We're gonna make this work. You know what? I hope we're gonna make this work. Yeah, it'll work. It's not too bad. But I think this little thing of paint was on its last leg, so I'm glad we decided to do this today. We are gonna, however, have to use the stir stick to get it out of there. It's all good. And you can tell I reuse stir sticks too. A lot of times I just use them and then scrape the sides of my can and then rinse it off and go for it again. So here we go. We're gonna get the rest of that out of there, and it's gonna end up being about a half a cup, I think. So you'll just bear with me a minute. I really should have checked the paint out, I guess, before I started doing the video, but sometimes I get in a hurry and I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants. Y'all ever do that? And sometimes that's the best way to do it. Sometimes, you know, we can overthink things, and sometimes it's best to just jump in and do it. Not always. Not always. There are some times when that just really doesn't work out very well, but anyway, got that close enough to half a cup, so we're just going to dump that. Ooh, let me get it where you can see it. We're going to dump that into our container, and again, I normally like to use those neat little containers with the measuring lines and the top on them, because that way I can store it a little bit better, but probably what I'll do with this once I get it mixed up is just put it in a butter bowl or something until I'm ready to use it. But this is the kind of container again that I'm talking about. It's just one of the little 1 quart. This brand is called Measure Right, and that's what it's for. It's a mixing container. Now once you get that 1/2 cup of paint and whatever you decide to mix it with, it seems like it looks white from right there, but really it's sassy lilac, it's purple. Then you're just going to take about 1/2 teaspoon of Plaster of Paris to every 1/2 cup of paint. So let's see, my goodness y'all, I still have some of my still have some measuring tools down in here, so I think let's get some of that off there. Yeah, that's a 1/2 tablespoon right there. So we're going to use that and just level it off. Doesn't have to be exact. This is really an inexact science, but I am going to knock some of that off because this is just a little bit of paint. But anyway, just put it down in there. You can even mix like, and sometimes I like to do this, mix your Plaster of Paris with the water first. And if you'll heat your water just a little bit, just some hot tap water, that'll keep it from clumping up quite as bad. If you just use half hot tap water with the Plaster of Paris and mix it up really good before you add that to your paint, that's a good way to avoid clumps. But I didn't do that today, and I think it'll turn out okay anyway. So I'm just going to set my Plaster of Paris aside, and I just have a bottle of water up here. And just take that. Now again, this was half a cup of paint, 1/2 teaspoon of Plaster of Paris, and then I'm going to add about 3 tablespoons of water to that. And again, this is not an exact science, and a lot of times, you know, I just play with it till it's the consistency that I want. So let's go ahead and mix this up. Just going to use this stir stick again. I think I may have gotten this maybe just a little too thin, but it's going to take me a minute to get it mixed to where I can tell. And I'm slinging paint, y'all. Am I the only messy one? I can make some messes, but have fun. So anyway, you're going to get that mixed up really good. And I know you probably can't see it, but it's just like the consistency of just thin paint. For upholstery, and you're gonna see this a little later on in the tutorials. For upholstery, you're gonna want that paint even thinner. You're gonna want it just really liquidy so that it can soak into the fibers. But for chalk painting on wood, it does need to be thin, but you know, not so thin that you're going to be dripping all over everything. So I'm going to give you a formula down below. I know I told you a little bit about how I mixed this little batch up, but for those of you that are math challenged like myself, I am going to have to take a minute and think about this, and I'll give it to you below. But this is just, like I said, it's a 1/2 cup of paint, a 1/2 teaspoon of Plaster of Paris, and 3 tablespoons water, and that's just about the consistency that we need. So I do want to set this aside for a minute though, and just talk to you just a little bit about what to do once you have your paint applied to the wood. And after you have, a lot of times you'll want to rough up the edges with a sander or something, because that you know, sometimes that just really gives your chalk paint just a really cool look, to just distress it a little bit. Well, after you do that, the thing about chalk paint is that even though it goes on like a dream, it's very little prep work required. The thing about it is just a really thin coating, and you know, it's a coating that, you know, especially if a piece is going to see some heavy use, it's not going to hold up as well as you might need it to unless it has a sealer on it. Now, you can use a poly coat on it. I've done that. You have to be careful with poly coats though, because sometimes if you don't really read and make sure that it's a non-yellowing formula, a poly coat can turn yellow on you, especially with white, and I feel like it would probably do it even with this pale lilac. I think that's light enough that you might get some yellowing, and that's what you don't want, unless, you know, unless you're just wanting a real, yeah, you don't want that. I don't want that anyway. But a sealer. I have found one that I think I like pretty much better than anything, and it's the Krylon Chalky Finish Wax. Now this one is the dark vintage, and it's just going to give it like an aged distressed look. But most of the time what I have found for most of my projects, I just like the clear wax. It's in a can just like this. You can get this at Lowe's. It's the Krylon, just the chalky finish antiquing wax in clear. And a lot of tutorials that I see recommend buying the special brushes for your sealing wax, but I don't think you need that. I think just a regular paintbrush does a good enough job, and you're just going to put that on and then buff it off with a soft lint-free cloth, and that's going to be your finish. You can even use just like regular furniture wax, but I really prefer the antiquing wax just because the smell is not as strong. But now if I don't have it, I'll break out the what's that called? Not Minwax. I'll put it in the tutorial. I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, this doesn't smell like petroleum or anything. It's real low odor, so I really like it, and I think you will too. So that's the scoop on mixing up your paint and then how to seal your project, and I will put the details down below.